A couple of days ago, I slept with Chen Zhuoyan. Shen Zhouyi said this with one arm looped through mine, the other lazily flipping through clothes on the mall rack. Her breezy tone barely hid the near heart attack jolting my fragile little heart. Shen Zhouyi, my friend. Chen Zhuoyan, my boss's boss, the big boss. I forced myself to stay calm, my mind suddenly replaying last weekend's company celebration banquet, her sprawled across Chen Zhuoyan's table, drunk out of her mind. It hit me like a freight train. I wanted to kick myself for being so clueless. I should have seen it that day. Shen Zhouyi isn't even an employee at our company, and as a notorious heavyweight in the drinking game, when has she ever passed out at a dinner table? Plus, she texted me afterward, perfectly coherent, telling me not to wait up, she had somewhere to be. That whole night, I was either lurking behind the crowd, toasting the higher-ups, or parked in a corner, stuffing my face until my waistband begged for mercy. Now, Shen Zhouyi was on a spree, picking clothes like they were vegetables at a market, piling them up at the checkout. The POS machine chirped cheerfully as it spat out receipts. She flashed Chen Zhuoyan's black card at me, smirking. Chen Zhuoyan's card, why not use it? Thinking back, the first time I showed her pics from our company's annual party, she'd already zeroed in on Chen Zhuoyan. Back then, she got weirdly invested in my job, digging up all sorts of dirt online, top-tier school grad, workaholic, spotless dating history, a rare gem among the elite. As the assistant to Chen Zhuoyan's assistant, I barely catch a glimpse of his shadow. But in one little +1 allowed celebration banquet, he was hers. That's Shen Zhouyi for you. She's a master green tea, the apex predator of the dating jungle. Just as we were hauling our bags out of the mall, she froze. I followed her stare to the giant LED screen outside, streaming our company's latest women's fashion launch live. The camera panned backstage and Chen Zhuoyan's figure flickered into view. He faced away, bending slightly, pressing a soft kiss to the delicate butterfly bone of a model. The model was Ding Qing, Chen Zhuoyan's official girlfriend. Her spine always ramrod straight, elegant and regal, she'd left a mark on me. Shen Zhouyi didn't budge for ages. Women like that are always so proud. She stared up at the screen, her grip on my arm trembling faintly, pupils shrinking with a wild thrill. A sly, vicious smirk curled her lips, her eyes glinting with the hunger of the hunt. They won't last. I sighed. That's her in a nutshell. Does she like Chen Zhuoyan? Not really. What she craves is the rush of the chase, the ego boost of crushing someone underfoot. She's been that way since we were kids. She's the one who taught me what a top-tier green tea really is, bending low to please others, all to please herself. Truth is, my motives for showing her Chen Zhuoyan weren't pure either. If she fixated on someone else, I'd be in the clear, right? I weighed my next move carefully, then seized the moment to come clean. I'm dating someone. Planning to get married this year. What? Shen Zhouyi whipped her head back to me, eyes popping. Who's the guy? When did this happen? How did I not know? My sheepish grin gave me away. She caught on fast, narrowing her eyes and grinding her teeth. Oh, so you've been hiding it from me. Getting gutsy, huh? She huffed, then lightning quick, lunged to tickle my waist. Fine. My birthday's next month, bring him. I'll size him up. I shrieked, helpless under her ticklish assault, nodding like crazy. Only then did she back off, satisfied with a smug little huff. 2. As Shen Zhouyi's birthday drew closer, I found myself curled up on the sofa, biting my nails, trying to pick out a gift for her. Lately, I'd been swamped with gift selecting at work during the day, and now I had to keep at it for this sister of mine at home. It was giving me a headache. Just then, my phone buzzed with a message from the delivery service. Your package has been refused and is being returned. This was the 7th rejection in a row. Jewelry, flowers, bags, shoes, you name it, I'd tried it. Nothing worked. I screenshotted the message and sent it to Assistant Zheng, then glanced over at Shannon. He was sitting behind the dining table, completely absorbed in his law firm work. He'd been hustling in this city alone, always working hard, always pushing himself. I looked at my phone, then back at him. After repeating this a few times, he snapped his laptop shut and walked over to sit beside me, amused. Just say it. I rested my head lightly on his shoulder, speaking quickly and softly. I have a really good friend I'd like you to meet. Shannon nodded, calm as ever. I know, Shen Zhouyi, right. He adjusted his position, resting his head on mine, a smile in his voice. It's about time. You're always talking about her, I'm curious. With that, he wrapped his arm around my waist, and we snuggled together on the sofa, watching TV. I've always loved this position, we do it often. The TV was playing some entertainment news. After the red carpet at the Starlight Awards, a swarm of reporters surrounded Ding Qing, microphones thrust at her, asking for her thoughts on her boyfriend being caught in a parked car with a suspected outsider. On screen, she wore a sheer gown with a plunging back, the outdoor wind plastering her meticulously styled bangs to her face. Amid the sea of puffer jackets, she looked almost vulnerable. The news cut to paparazzi footage grainy, shaky, and distant. Even with the low quality, others might not recognize her, but I could tell instantly, it was Shen Zhouyi. She had a slightly fuller figure, and when she wore stockings, the tops would pinch her thighs just enough to create a tantalizing curve. I couldn't help but recall what she'd said when we parted after shopping that day. Even if he's a saint, Ding Qing's type is too aloof for him, especially with her personality. She'd smiled faintly. Prime beef is delicious, but for lust, it's the low-grade stuff that's most thrilling. I couldn't describe the shock in my heart. I'd always known she was a genius at relationships, effortlessly ensnaring men like Chen Zhuoyan, who seemed untouchable to ordinary girls. She wielded those unspoken things between men and women like a weapon, something I'd never grasp in a lifetime. And she was ambitious, focused, and fearless. My phone buzzed again, this time with a reply from Assistant Cheng. My eyes were glued to the TV, waiting for more, a strange tension building inside me. After a brief silence, Ding Qing's face darkened. "I'm not aware of the details," she said coldly. "We've already broken up." She hurried away, leaving only her proud, straight back in the frame. Somehow, it looked lonely. The screen switched to another celebrity, and I finally glanced at my phone. The message was short, "Just confirmed with Mr. Chen, no more gifts needed." I gaped in shock. The battle hadn't even officially started, and already, the victor was clear. It was astonishing. Shen Zhouyi, oh Shen Zhouyi. She could effortlessly pry open the loose corners of men's hearts. Victory came too easily, which is probably why she never stopped casting her net, relishing every moment. Shen's steady breathing brushed my hair as he dozed off, his head nodding slightly. I shifted a little, my gaze tracing his smooth forehead, straight nose, rosy lips, and finally resting on the small hollow at his collarbone. There's no denying it, Shen is successful and handsome. Maybe not on Chen Zhuoyan's level, but still top tier. Perhaps I'd picked up a trick or two from Shen Zhouyi, plus a bit of luck, and somehow, I'd landed him. I know my limits. Shen is about as good as I can get, even on my tiptoes. But is it really okay for them to meet? Will things go as I expect? I couldn't help but worry. But no one could give me answers. I just shifted slightly, burying my head deeper into Shen's warm embrace, trying to smother the unease. 3. Shen Zhouyi chose an upscale Cantonese restaurant for her birthday dinner. Before that, I'd started sneakily switching Shen's toiletries and cologne to match my own scent. I'd heard it makes men dependent on your smell, subconsciously linking it to love. Shen Zhouyi taught me that back in school. She'd lounged on my dorm bed, painting her nails, excitedly sharing her latest discovery. You know that saying, to capture a man's heart, capture his stomach. It's incomplete. To make a man love you long term, you need to make all his senses addicted to you: sight, sound, smell. You can cheat a little with all of them. Shen Zhouyi really knows her stuff. So, before the birthday dinner, I'd insisted strongly that she bring her boyfriend too, saying I didn't want Shen to feel awkward as the only guy. But the real reason, which we both knew, was that I wanted an extra layer of security. Growing up, I was never as pretty or smart as her. She only had me as a female friend because I was no threat, always the perfect sidekick. Not that she needed female friends. Conquering men was thrill enough for her. She was always eager to prove her charm, again and again. But this time, I wanted to protect my little patch of ground. Still, I hadn't expected Chen Zhuoyan to actually show up. He picked up Shen Zhouyi first, arriving a bit early, and politely shook hands with me and Shen, his grip firm and dry. Shen Zhouyi barely touched Shen's fingertips, greeting him with a gracious smile. "I've heard so much about you. We share the same surname, you know." While they exchanged pleasantries, I stole a glance at Chen Zhuoyan. It was surreal. Before this, I'd only seen him from afar at company events. Today, he wore a casual hoodie and light jeans, his hair soft and tousled, not slicked back like usual. He looked like any other handsome young man. To think we were now dining at the same table, crossing ordinary boss-employee boundaries, all thanks to Shen Zhouyi. Chen Zhuoyan gallantly poured water for everyone and handed the menu to Shen Zhouyi. I was sure she'd noticed Shen, and I shared the same scent. She hid her face behind the menu, winked at me teasingly, and mouthed, "Relax." She was the dangerous yet captivating villain. My face flushed and I quickly lowered my head, sipping water in silence. Shen, a lawyer, was as articulate in private as he was in court, and Chen Zhuoyan was no slouch either. Would Shen Zhouyi take an interest in Shen? I wondered. I knew he fit her type perfectly. The dinner lasted nearly 3 hours, light and enjoyable, with hardly a dull moment. Chen Zhuoyan picked up the tab. As we left, Shen Zhouyi waved goodbye from the restaurant entrance. "Keep it up," she said to Shen with a grin, raising her hand to pat his shoulder. My heart skipped a beat. I subtly stepped between them, lightly high-fiving her raised hand instead. She looked surprised. Just then, Chen Zhuoyan returned from paying, and Shen Zhouyi quickly adjusted, leaning into him with a soft, lazy whine. Throughout the dinner, she'd kept the conversation with Shen balanced, friendly but not overly familiar, no overstepping. It was perfect. Yet, an inexplicable unease gnawed at me. Maybe I knew her too well. As we walked away, I pulled out a mirror to touch up my lipstick. In the reflection, I saw them still at the entrance, embracing sweetly. But Shen Zhouyi's face rested on Chen Zhuoyan's shoulder, her eyes following Shen and me, thoughtful. Will everything be okay? I was preoccupied the whole way home. Shen noticed. As soon as we got in, he turned to me, one hand on my shoulder, the other pulling me close by the waist. What's on your mind? His lips, slightly damp, trailed along my jawline to my ear. Through our thin clothes, I could feel the heat of his chest. Do you think I'm not good enough for you? You're so wonderful. Shen paused, then whispered, don't worry, she's not my type. My heart sank. He leaned down, kissing my neck, moving slowly to my chest. I wrapped my arms around his neck, responding passionately, lost in the moment. Today, both of them told me to relax. But I felt defenseless, especially against Shen Zhouyi. My heart tightened, the cloud over it growing darker. The unease wouldn't leave. Lately, I couldn't shake the feeling that Shen was working late more often. His job had always been demanding, but maybe it was just my paranoia. I started checking his shirts for long hairs, burying my face in his laundry, sniffing for unfamiliar perfumes. I even began questioning his whereabouts. At first, Shen explained patiently, but soon he'd just frown in silence. He probably still loved me, but I could tell he was less fond of me. I was terrified. I knew my behavior was pushing him away, but I couldn't stop. Every late night, I was a wreck, torturing myself. I was driving him further away. I knew it wasn't healthy, but I couldn't change. Sometimes, from upstairs, I'd see his car parked below. He'd sit there, smoking, the cigarette flickering, but he wouldn't come up. Shen Zhouyi still invited me out shopping, manicures, all on Chen Zhuoyan's card. Occasionally, Chen Zhuoyan would call. Shen Zhouyi would be mid-shopping spree or getting her nails done, mumbling half-hearted replies. She didn't seem invested. Found a new target? I asked. She was leisurely picking nail designs. She glanced at me, smiled, and whispered, guess. Her tone was playful, teasing, irresistible yet infuriating. Shen and I were getting married this year. Surely, even she wouldn't stoop to seducing her friend's fiancé. I tried to convince myself, feeling a pang of sympathy for Chen Zhuoyan. Her interests were fleeting, loving her was a losing game. In love, the first to fall loses. The clock struck 1:30 a.m. The door clicked open. I shot up from the sofa, blurting, where were you? Shen, looking weary, had his navy suit draped over his arm. He frowned at me. Drinks with clients. Stop this, you're stressing me out. I swallowed my concern. I'd been too aggressive. Sorry, I muttered, taking his suit. He went straight to the bathroom. We hadn't been intimate in ages, he always said he was tired. I dusted off his suit, about to iron it when I froze. Carefully, I lifted the lapel and pulled out a long, chestnut-colored curl. My mind exploded, my body ice cold. That color was rare. Shen Zhouyi had just sent me a selfie, boasting about her new hair color and inviting me to dye mine the same. In the photo, her hair matched this shade, curl, and length. Why was she so insistent on me dyeing it too? I trembled. So if she left hair behind, no one would notice. Shen Zhouyi hadn't changed. My worst fears were right. I was both vindicated and heartbroken. 5. The next few days passed in a haze. I zoned out at work so many times that I didn't even notice Chen Zhuoyan walking right up to my desk until he tapped it with his knuckles, his expression serious. Has Xiaoyi been to your place these past few days? Is she in a bad mood? I looked up at him, dazed. He was back in his tailored suit, hair perfectly styled, a far cry from the casual guy I'd seen at dinner. He was once again my boss's boss, the big boss. But something had subtly changed. At least now, he sought me out because I was Shen Zhouyi's friend. We were both pitiful losers in love. I shook my head. He sighed softly, about to leave, but I grabbed the edge of his jacket. My voice was barely a whisper, yet it roared in my ears. Want to grab a drink later? I knew I was drunk, really drunk. I couldn't stop rambling about my recent emotional roller coaster. How hateful and hypocritical men are, how worthless friendship is. Deep down, I knew why. Shen worked so hard, pouring himself into his career and his relationships. Maybe he did feel I wasn't good enough for him, especially compared to Shen Zhouyi. The alcohol numbed my senses, and I lost count of how many times I repeated the same complaints. Finally, Chen Zhuoyan couldn't take it anymore and reached out to help me home. Ugh, I turned my head and threw up on the ground, using my last shred of clarity to avoid vomiting on him. He hesitated, then hoisted me up like a sack of potatoes, hailed a cab, and took me to the nearest luxury hotel. He didn't know where I lived, so he had the driver grab a bottle of water for me to rinse my mouth. I stumbled out of the car, nearly collapsing into him at the hotel entrance. The gleaming revolving doors and blinding lights finally pierced through my foggy mind, bringing a sliver of clarity. I asked him, "Do you hate me?" Fate is strange. He used to be untouchable, yet here he was, patiently listening to my drunken babble at a hotel entrance. I could never have managed this alone. His stunning model girlfriend alone would have overwhelmed me. Maybe I should thank Shen Zhouyi. In the cool night breeze, I saw him shake his head. Tears welled up uncontrollably. I looked at him through blurry eyes. "Shenan." I tilted my head up, pouting my lips like a ripe cherry waiting to be picked. I called someone else's name. I was still afraid that saying those 3 words would make everything irreparable. Another gust of wind blew, chilling me. Under the dark sky, with a crescent moon hanging, I stubbornly held my pose, unmoving. I waited. I waited a long time. Finally, a light kiss landed on my lips, a fleeting peck. Like a dragonfly skimming water. Gone in an instant. I quickly realized it was a friendly, almost obligatory kiss. My lashes fluttered. Tears fell. 6. Only Chen Zhuoyan knew my pain. I didn't tell Shenan or Shen Zhouyi. Anyone with the surname Shen was my curse. Sometimes, Chen Zhuoyan and I would meet for a drink, but only as friends. He was truly good, aloof yet principled. As a workaholic, he hadn't dated much. Ding Qing exhausted him, and Shen Zhouyi confused him. But he was still trying to make this relationship work. These were our little secrets. My heart danced. He used to be a star in the sky, now half fallen to earth. With a little effort, I could reach him. But when I hinted at Shen Zhouyi's true nature, he refused to believe me or pretended not to. I wasn't in a hurry. If he didn't react, neither would I. As long as I knew I was right, time would tell. Everything seemed calm, as if no one had strayed. Days passed, from spring to summer, and into August. For the upcoming Qixi festival, Shen Zhouyi called to say she'd be spending it with Chen Zhuoyan. I smiled and said congrats. Later, Shenan texted that he had to work late. I sighed, unsurprised, then called him back, speaking softly, "Take care of yourself. I'll be waiting at home." After hanging up, I sat alone on the living room sofa, staring at the empty house, the only sound the ticking of the clock. On this beautiful night, who will you spend it with? The star in the sky, or the worm that brings you forbidden pleasure? I closed my eyes, pondering slowly. I'd done this countless times, like an insect lurking in the dark, observing, calculating. Then, a strange thought struck me. It grew louder, booming like a bell in my heart. I felt destiny calling. It's today. It's now. I almost laughed out loud. I knew her well enough. My efforts were about to pay off. I put on my most beautiful dress, did my makeup perfectly, and picked an unopened bottle of fine wine from the cabinet. On this night for lovers, I raced back to the office and knocked on my boss's door. Chen Zhuoyan, the workaholic, would be there. Sure enough, he opened the door. I looked up at his tired face and smiled. "Isn't Shen Zhouyi with you? It's Valentine's Day." He didn't speak, just sighed. Maybe he was waiting for an answer too. Finally, he gave in. "What do you want?" I opened my phone. A green dot blinked on the map. "I think I know where she is. Want to come with me?" I'd set Shen's phone to share his location. The map showed him at the office, but I sensed someone else was with him. I got a visitor's pass downstairs. The receptionist knew me, and everything went smoothly. Too smoothly, just like everything so far. Before we even stepped into the office, I heard unmistakable sounds. Familiar voices, male and female. What's inside? Shenan, probably still dressed, her likely naked, panties dangling from a raised leg. After all, low-grade lust is the most thrilling. She must be savoring her victory. Still want to go in? I shook the wine at Chen Zhuoyan. Shen Zhouyi is far more beautiful and capable than me. She could bring down men I could never reach. But unknowingly, I'd delivered the final blow. Along with Chen Zhuoyan's last shred of attachment, I hammered it dead in this secret trial. He wouldn't be confused anymore. "No need," he said darkly, turning away. To let them celebrate with a drink afterward, I left the wine on the table outside Shen's office. Imagining their faces, I could almost sing. I'd waited so long for this. For Chen Zhuoyan, I'd taken such a detour. I glanced back one last time, then followed him downstairs to the parking garage. I got into the passenger seat, closed the door, and lowered the privacy glass. I didn't want to be caught on camera. Chen Zhuoyan was crying. My star, my heart shattered. I leaned over, kissing away his tears. His beautiful eyes looked at me. Only at me. "I'll never betray you," I said. He was so close, his broken heart within reach. Who was it that said low-grade lust is the most pleasurable? I leaned down and unzipped his pants. This time, he didn't refuse. I'd surpassed my teacher, I was a good student. This gentle Qixi night belongs to the prepared. 7. Everything after that was simple, almost inevitable. I seized the chance, quickly getting married to Chen Zhuoyan. We signed a prenup. Infidelity means leaving with nothing. We both needed that security. This relationship had cost me too much, it needed to be sealed. Shen Zhouyi never married. She still flitted between men, chasing the thrill of the hunt. Is she still after victory? I don't know. I am completely uninterested. After scrolling through her social media indifferently, I turned off the screen. After that night, Shannon seemed to realize something and deleted all my contacts. I knew it wasn't guilt, it was shame. As for Shen Zhouyi, Chen Zhuoyan probably confronted her privately. Neither of them contacted me again. I didn't block Shen Zhouyi, her updates still amused me sometimes. She taught me a lot. I'm grateful to her. The room was warm, the cold wind outside softened. The afterglow hadn't faded. I turned to gaze at Chen Zhuoyan's sleeping face. He breathed evenly, peaceful and content. My eyes greedily traced his smooth forehead, straight nose, rosy lips, and the dip of his collarbone. He was no longer my boss's boss. From the first moment I saw him, I knew I shouldn't have him, but I wanted him desperately. I gently touched his brow, then the back of his head, his soft, damp hair in my palm. I showed her Chen Zhuoyan on purpose. If she focused on someone else, I'd be safe. Did I love Shannon? Maybe a little. But he was too short, I could reach him with a slight tiptoe. I always wanted the star in the sky. Back then, Chen Zhuoyan was successful, with a beautiful girlfriend, and I was just an assistant's assistant, unable to even touch his sleeve. I couldn't win. There was an invisible wall between us. I was supposed to stay in the audience, a speck of dust gazing at the star. In love, the first to fall loses. Luckily, I had a skilled hunter. I was never as pretty or smart as her, but she was aggressive and curious about what she couldn't have. Shannon was her type, but I hid him, pretended he was important, then let her accidentally find out. Let her see but not touch. Let her itch with desire. Shen Zhouyi couldn't stand it. How could a weak, clumsy leaf like me have something she hadn't seen? Luckily, I knew my hunter well. I couldn't be a hunter, but I could be a fisherman, netting the wounded prey she'd shot down, bringing it ashore, and caring for it. This is my fallen star. Perhaps sensing my gaze, Chen Zhuoyan opened his eyes groggily, then closed them again, murmuring, "Not sleeping." Sleeping, I burrowed into the covers, gently pulling his head to my chest. Sleep, sleep. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. In the deep night, stars twinkled, and soft moonlight spilled onto the bed. I closed my eyes with a smile. Tonight, I'll sleep well too.